Welcome, young sculptors, to the home edition of Multiples and Installation. I'm going to share with you today a few ways that you can be creative at home. And of course, I expect that you will find many other ways, but these are some kind of simple things to kind of get you started and to get you thinking about all the options that might be available to you while we are all at home. I'm going to go through 3 different things: using multiples that already exist in your home, using multiples that you create at home by cutting, folding, rolling, taping, and also then how might you use multiples from the outdoors if you have access to that. So we will go ahead and get started. So one of the things that you can do at home is to collect pieces of paper. You might have packaging that comes in your Amazon order. You might have old gift bags that you can use. You might have magazines. You might have construction paper, newspapers. If you're eating a pot pie at home for dinner, you can cut the front of the pot pie box off and use that as well. So what I've started doing is collecting different things, and I'm doing what I'm calling the Petri dish project, where every day I collect something that I actually use at home. I've been saving the front page of the newspaper every day and cutting pieces of that off. And then I'm collaging those pieces together. And so I've got a part of the newspaper here that I've used. I've got, I put up a new shower curtain this week, and so I cut off part of the shower curtain and I'm using that in this. And so every day I make a new Petri dish and I'm documenting then what's going on, and I hope then to put all of those together like a giant calendar eventually at the end. Another thing that you could think about is if you have pieces of yarn or string or something that can be wrapped, if you have an object at home, like this is a styrofoam ball underneath here, but let's say that you had an old coffee mug that had a chip in it and nobody wanted to use it anymore. You could wrap that piece, you could use string, you could use other things to kind of transform that object into something completely different. You could look at artists like Merritt Oppenheim, who did one of my very favorite pieces called the Fur-Lined Teacup, for inspiration. Another way that you can create sculpture, or an installation to be specific, is to think about items that you already have at home that you have multiples of. For instance, do you have a lot of t-shirts like we have at our house? You can rearrange the t-shirts, you can stack them, try doing different things with them, and while it may not take you that long to do, it's still a viable way to create, and as long as you are documenting what you're doing, that's really all that matters. So you could use this same group of t-shirts, for example, and every day rearrange them in a different way and document them. Welcome back, young sculptors. You know how I love corrugated board. So this is a series of boxes that have been cut up into 2x2 pieces, small squares, and that have then been threaded onto a wire that is holding them. Eventually, what ended up happening with this piece, this is an old piece of mine, is that this was hung on the wall. I don't have a wall tall enough in my home to hang it, so I'm displaying it like this for you, but you can see the multiples of the corrugated board that I've kind of restructured here. Another way that you can manipulate a material, and we did this in class as a group, is by taking what is a 2-dimensional piece and turning it into a 3-dimensional by either folding it. This is what we did earlier in class, remember? We made the group installation of multiples of this kind of shape. But something that you could think about is what happens when you roll this piece into a small cylinder, or it could be a big cylinder depending on the sizes pieces of paper that you have, and you can glue it. But if you don't have glue and you have tape, you could tape this. And then what I'm doing is going to create a series of small tubes here, and think about if these tubes were much larger and if I was this pink little piece right down here, what would this installation space be? And so what I'm doing here is creating a model, or a fancy name for that is a mockette, for what might become a possible installation. You could do something like this by turning a closet, clean out a closet and use the closet as the installation space. Open a drawer, take all the stuff out of the drawer and put things into it. Use a shoebox. Anything where you can create your own space and start thinking about installations that could happen within that space. And again, always documenting everything that you're doing. While I was outside looking around, I collected a series of pine needles, and I realized that each of the needles has this little tiny bud thing on the end of it. I don't know exactly what that's called, but that seemed like an interesting thing to gather up and to see the multiple. And so what I've done is bundled bunches of them up and then used embroidery thread to wrap them up into small little pieces. And this is part of a larger piece that I created a few years back, and some people called them tiny ponytails, but I think it's really interesting when this single thing, when you begin to put it with other things to bundle it and make it a multiple, it becomes something completely different that can be kind of interesting.